This is Bob Flaws, and on this YouTube segment, I'd like to talk about a very famous mid-18th century Chinese doctor, Wu Qian, and the Yizhongjinjian, the golden mirror of ancestral medicine. Many Western practitioners have never heard of Wu Qian or never heard of the golden mirror of ancestral medicine, but they're really very important milestones in the evolution of Chinese medicine. Wu Qian was appointed as editor of a team of perhaps, I don't know, a dozen other Chinese doctors. He was appointed by the Chinese emperor of that time, the great, most famous emperor Qianlong, to survey all that existed in the realm of medical practice in China at that time, and then to sift through and extract everything that Wu and his team thought was the best, was very important, very useful, and also very clinically practicable, stuff that really worked and that needed to be all pulled together into one, let's say, medical encyclopedia, and preserved and passed down to both the current crop of Chinese doctors, but also to future generations. So Wu Qian and his team spent something like 7 years reading all the available medical texts, interviewing Chinese doctors, gathering all sorts of information from every source, from all the previous dynasties that they could, and winnowing through it, trying to separate the grain from the chaff, trying to figure out, well, what is really the best part of this? And these men took this very seriously. They worked very hard on this project. It's said even that some of the people on this team died from overwork during the accomplishment of this project. Well, sometime around, I believe the date is 1747, this great compendium of Chinese medicine, the Golden Mirror of Ancestral Medicine, was published. And the word ancestral here actually has another meaning. It means gathered. It also means gathering. And so there's a double entendre. It is the gathering of everything good from all the previous ancestors. And in the Yizhongjinjian, we find, in fact, the basic outlines of the treatment of disease via pattern discrimination. Prior to this time, different authors writing on different diseases typically would describe what they thought were the one or two main patterns of that disease. But Wu Qian and his group, by looking at the full library of Chinese medicine, everything that was extant up to that time, pulled together all of the different patterns that different authors had written about any one disease. And so we see then in the Yizhongjinjian, the Golden Mirror of Ancestral Medicine, that if you look up any one disease, you'll see the fullest breakdown of patterns and their treatments up to that time. So, in fact, we can say that the Yizhongjinjian is the locus classicus, the classical site, the classical root of Chinese medicine as we know it today. The definition of standard professional Chinese medicine today is that we base treatment on pattern discrimination. And if you go to any book on treatment of disease, you look up the disease and you'll see 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 patterns listed under that disease, and then the treatment principles, the signs and symptoms, of course, and a formula or acupuncture points for that pattern. Well, it was the Yizhongjinjian that set the mold for this approach. Some people think, erroneously, that modern Chinese medicine is this new entity created by the Maoist communist regime in the 1950s, the 1960s, and that as such this is something very new, that it's a break with the tradition of Chinese medicine. But if you really understand the history of evolution of Chinese medicine, and you're familiar with the literature as it exists in Chinese, then you can see that in point of fact, what we do today was already had its antecedents. It essentially was in place by the middle of the 18th century. That this was not some new approach to Chinese medicine, but that in fact then throughout the rest of the Qing dynasty, through the Republican period, and on into the Communist period, this methodology was then further refined, augmented, added to, so that nowadays we do have pattern discrimination breakdown for most modern Western diseases, not just the traditional Chinese diseases. So for that reason, it's very important to know the name of Wu Qian, the editor of this famous Qing Dynasty medical encyclopedia, and also the title of that encyclopedia, the Yizhong Jinjian, the Golden Mirror of Ancestral Medicine.